Hello, welcome to my channel. My name's Callie and this is my first ever YouTube video. I did not know what video to make for the longest time. I've wanted to do this for literally ages and then I thought a book review would actually be a really good introduction to YouTube. I just always want to discuss books with people after I've just finished reading them. And to be honest, none of my friends and family actually read the same books as I do. So I just thought this would be a really good outlet, to be honest. I want to put a disclaimer here and just say I do not read anywhere near the number of books that most people do on BookTok and BookTube. I really only just started getting back into reading like late last year, and I don't like have a massive reading target or anything. My reading target is literally 20 books in the year, which is like crazy low, but I'm not that bothered about a target or anything like that. I'm not bothered about getting through loads and loads of books. I just wanted to get back into reading and start really enjoying books again, to be honest. I do go some months reading no books at all. Like, I have other hobbies and interests and things going on, and to be honest, like, how much I want to read ebbs and flows, you know? So I'm not going to force myself to read just to hit a target or anything like that. That's just not what I want to do at all. So yeah, I'm not going to lie, if I was doing this on a monthly basis, I don't know how much I would really have to talk about. But I thought because we've just gotten past the midway point in the year, that it would be a good opportunity, because I think I have read, I need to check this now, I want to say I think I've read about 14 books or something between January and June. So there's a little bit more content there, and probably a good one to start with. I have got my story graph right here. You can't really see, but this is just to kind of keep on track of what I read and when and what format. And then I've also got my Notion, which you definitely can't see. But basically, when I have just finished a book, I will go into my Notion. I will write it down. I'll write down how many pages it was, the genre, all of that. I'll give it a star rating, and I'll also put a review, so all of my thoughts about it. So I can just refer to that if I get a little bit lost. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna do loads of star ratings in this video. Like, if there's one where I'm like, this was like such a good book, like definite 5 out of 5 stars, then I'll just say that. I'm not gonna put a lot of pressure on myself though to give a star rating, because sometimes I just don't know really, and I don't want to like stress myself out by trying to decide a star rating for something that to me is just like, it can be summed up with like a few words about it. You'll get the kind of gist of how I felt about it anyway, you know what I mean? Okay, so without further ado, let's jump into it. Apparently, the first book that I read in 2024 was this one, Before the Coffee Gets Cold. I'm not gonna lie, I thought this was the second book I read, but apparently not. I think I must have read a really heavy book in December or something last year, and I felt like I just needed a palate cleanser, and this is a really short book, to be fair. So this one, I want to say it's about 200 pages. It's just over 200 pages. It's quite a short little book, and I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it. This is a Japanese book. I've never read like anything by a Japanese author or set in Japan before. I think it served its purpose. Okay, so I feel like it was short, it was sweet. I didn't have to think too much. It was an easy read, and it's what I needed, to be honest. I liked the setting. I feel like, oh my god, it really just made me want a coffee and it made me really want to go to a coffee shop. It was very kind of, I don't know, it felt very cozy, very homely. I liked all of that about it. A couple of things that I didn't love. So in this book, I just felt like people never said what they wanted to say. Like, they would think something, but they would never actually say it. And this was just something that kind of irritated me, because I can understand that being an issue for like a couple of characters. But when it's every single character in the book, I just started to get a little bit like, guys, someone needs to start saying what they want to say here. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just getting a little bit much. However, I still thought it was quite a touching story. It made me emotional, definitely. It definitely touched me. I know that there are other books in this series or in this universe, I'm not entirely sure, I don't really feel like I'm going to reach for them. Like, I'm not inclined to go and read one of them. And I think that is just simply because there's other books that I'd rather read instead. Yeah, I don't at all regret reading this book. I did like it. Like I said, it served its purpose for sure. But yeah, I feel like there's other things I'd rather read going forward than the rest of this series. So yeah, first one done. The next book, you must have heard of this at this point. It's everywhere. The Secret History by Donna Tartt. So after my palette cleanser, I really thought, let me pick up something. Let me pick up something that is big and beefy. Like, this is a chunky book. And I absolutely loved it. This is one where I would say, yeah, probably 5 stars from me. I just thought it was, the way that Donna Tartt writes is just so beautiful. It really takes you to that place. It really, you know, makes you feel like you are there with them. I've not really read a lot of dark academia before, but I think I really like it. I just think like university or like an academic institution like that, it is just such a special place. It's just its own place in society where you're no longer at school and you've no longer got the constraints of like high school and stuff like that, but you're not out in the real world yet, like working and stuff. You have like this weird freedom that you wouldn't have anywhere else. And like, it's just kind of this sense of anything could happen. You know, I think you're like in a real phase of growth. You're really like changing as a person and as a character. And therefore, I think it just makes for a brilliant setting for books and for stories to be like unwound. And I just think it really, really works. Like, the plot of this book in this setting is just, it's just perfect. And then having it change through all the seasons, like watching the characters, you know, at university in the fall and stuff like that was just stunning. It was just the imagery, you just really felt like you were there. It made you want to be there and see what they're seeing and like live there with them, because it just really drew you in. I loved the story as well. I loved how well you kind of got to know all of the characters and their flaws and how kind of unlikable a lot of them were. I watched this interview with Donna Tartt where she is talking about how you basically know the kind of main plot point in the book, or like a very big plot point in the book, in the first couple of pages really. I'm not going to spoil it anyway, but I'm sure most people will know. You know that very early on. So then she was talking about how the real challenge was creating suspense and building up the suspense to something that the reader already knows about. So that was really interesting, and it was definitely, I think she did it in such a brilliant way. I also loved the main character, how he was a completely unreliable narrator. I think you start second guessing a lot of things he's said and done later in the book. You know, you kind of realise how unreliable he is, and you start to question whether everything we know as readers is true, or if it's his interpretation, and his interpretation is probably not correct. I thought the end was just really well done as well, because you didn't quite know, it was funny, you didn't quite know how it was all going to wrap up after everything that had happened. And I think it was done in a really interesting way that really kind of made me think. Like, I thought about it for quite a while afterwards, about like this kind of idea of purgatory and like your individual purgatory, you know? Even though you know what's going to happen at the start, there's still shocks and twists after that and like along the way. So don't think that there's nothing else, you know, like, I don't know, I don't want you to be put off by thinking that you are going to know what happens at the start. There's still things that you don't know and you probably won't fully see coming, you know, things like that. There is one thing I want to say about this book, because I didn't see anybody else mention this. Basically, the characters in this book talk to each other in Greek quite a bit. And also other languages. I want to say French, but I've got to be honest, I've not read this in quite a while, so I can't remember really. And especially at the start of the book, it isn't really explained to you like what was said. And I remember when I was reading it, I found it like a little bit, like off-putting. Like I was a little bit like, am I too stupid to read this book? I don't know what they're talking about. But of course, like at the same time, I was thinking, all these people on TikTok aren't talking ancient Greek, so they can't know what's being said either. But yeah, that one kind of threw me a little bit at first. But honestly, what I would say to anyone that's about to read it is don't let it put you off or anything like that. If you need to know what the characters are saying, then it will tell you in plain English what is being said, you know. If there's no translation there, don't worry about it. It's fine. You don't need to go and look it up. I didn't translate anything that was said in the book that like hadn't been explained or anything, and I still understood what was going on perfectly. So don't let that put you off. It's done like that, I think, because especially at the start, they want you to feel like this is like, they want you to feel how the main character is feeling. Like, these people are elite, like I want to be part of them. They are so clever, they are so academic. It almost makes you feel a little bit left behind, a little bit like, wow, you know, I'm not at their level. And that's kind of what it's trying to create, I think. Just know that that's kind of the purpose of it. And if you are feeling a little bit like taken aback, then the book is kind of serving its purpose. Anyway, that's my interpretation of it. I think that's what it's trying to do, and if so, it does it very well. So yeah, great book, love that. Struggled to top it, to be honest, but let's keep going. So after The Secret History, I wanted another secret history, to be honest. I wanted to read something really similar, had the same vibes. I was on that train, you know what I mean? And so I picked up The Maidens. He wrote The Silent Patient, and I loved The Silent Patient. I read that a good couple of years ago, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I thought this is gonna be brilliant. Like, this is gonna be really, really good. The cover, I love the cover as well. This just did not hit. This just did not do what it needed to do. I think this had so much potential, and it just fell so flat for me. Preface this, okay, because I feel like people going into this, they're going to be going into this wanting a dark academia read. They're going to want to know a lot about the Maidens. It's going to feel like, oh, I'm going into a very like a book about the occult and stuff like this, you know. Guys, I'm going to be honest, I don't think the Maidens even needed to be in it. Like, it just isn't about them, really. It's just such a weird, like, I don't know why it's kind of built up as if you're gonna like see these girls and like in this kind of like, you know, culty situation. Like, that's how it's really like delivered to you, and that is just not what the book is about at all. I think they could have really done a lot with the Maidens, and I just do not think they were used to their full potential in this book at all. So I felt like that was a real shame. I felt like it had been missold to me a little bit, you know what I mean? I also just felt like the writing wasn't great. I don't know what happened because I thought The Silent Patient was really good, but this just was not great in my opinion. I really found it frustrating that there were so many red herrings in this book, because it just felt like sloppy writing to me. Like, you don't need to try and trick me at every corner. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think the writing should be strong enough, and like any twists and stuff should be strong enough that you don't need to throw all these red herrings in my face. And I just felt like, okay, so all those people, why were they acting the way they were acting then? You know what I mean? So why were they doing that then? You know what I mean? It was literally just used to confuse you. There wasn't really a good purpose for it. So I found that very frustrating. I did suspect this character for quite a while. However, I didn't fully see it coming, like the full explanation and backstory to why this had happened. So again, that was just a bit out of the blue. I am gonna have to say a spoiler here. So I'm gonna put a time on the screen for where to skip ahead to. I'm gonna give you a few seconds to pause and skip ahead, and then it's too late. If you're still here, it's too late, I'm afraid. Okay, so I just really struggled to believe that Mariana's husband spotted her at university, approached her, dated her, was with her for years, married her, and all the time just didn't really like her, was just there for the money, you know, and was prepared to do anything to her to get it, was prepared to, like, you know, watch her crash and burn, get her, do anything to get her out of the picture. That's how little he loved and respected her. And yet never once in those years did he falter. Like, you know what I mean? Never once in those years did she suspect that he wasn't that into her. Like, I just struggle to believe it a little bit. I just feel like, no, I don't know. Like, where has that come from? For me, no, I just didn't buy it really. Something else about the book, Mariana, I've just found her a little bit annoying, like, or not well written really. It kept talking about how shy she was and stuff like this, and yet sometimes she was throwing out these accusations at people. They were so bold, her accusations. She was like really not bothered about what anyone thought, and I just thought, that's not what someone that was shy would do. That's not really shy person behaviour, is it? Like, I'm struggling to believe it. Like, I don't know. I didn't think it was fleshed out well. I think they could have done a brilliant thing with this story, and they just took it in the wrong direction, and I just think it flopped, unfortunately. So this was not a good read for me. Next up, Julia Armfield's Our Wives Under the Sea. You've probably seen this a lot as well. Look at that cover. That is stunning. I really like this, again, although it left me feeling very sad for a good couple of days. Like, honestly, I felt this was a deeply sad book. It really touched me. When she kept saying things like, my Leah, oh, it really just broke my heart for some reason. Julia Armfield's writing in this book is stunning. I read some sentences in this book and my breath was just taken away at her use of language. I wanted to, like, literally take it out of the book and put it on my wall. Like, wow. She just has such a talent for words, in my opinion. For me, I could not take this book literally. I know, I've seen a lot of reviews where basically everyone, they read this book as if the events in this book are what actually happened. Like, everything that's been described is real and it happened. I could not do that. I just could not do it. For me, the book was a metaphor. It was a metaphor and that's it. Like, it was a metaphor for loss, in my opinion. It was a metaphor for loss. I think some people have said they feel like it could be a bit of a metaphor for trauma as well, which I can understand. I think this book is about losing someone that you love in a way where you don't have a lot of answers, and the journey to kind of accepting that. I think that's all it is. I don't think you need to take it as if everything in this book has actually happened. Maybe I've heard that possibly the author has said differently, and that's fine, but I can't do it. Like, it's going to wind me up. This is one of those books where you don't get a lot of answers at the end. Things aren't going to get clarified for you, and I really struggle with that, and I think a lot of people do struggle with that, and obviously it's been done in that way for a reason. And for me, the only way to really, like, feel at peace with this book is to just think it's a metaphor for grief. That's how I kind of worked with it. I'm going to say another spoiler, so again, there's going to be a time on the screen. I don't think it's a big spoiler, but just in case you really don't want to know anything about this book, please skip ahead. I'm going to give you a moment to do so. This tea is getting cold because I'm yapper. The one thing that really annoyed me about this book, like, I could deal with not knowing what happened under the sea, with all of this stuff. I can deal with not knowing about that, that's fine. I've got my own theories about things. I'm not going to talk about it right now, but whatever. The thing that I just really found frustrating was who was ringing her. We never found out who was ringing her. And I just don't understand what that brought to the plot. Like, what was with the phone calls? Who was it? This was just something that really, like, irritated me, because I just couldn't understand what part it played in the plot. So I found it really strange that it never developed into anything. Is it just me? I just need to know if somebody else felt this way. Moving on. Let's move on now. Next book. The next book was a non-fiction book. She is a scholar. Guys, she's a scholar. This is A Little History of Philosophy by Nigel Warburton. I really like this book. I feel like this was a bit of a random book for me to pick up because had I ever shown any interest in philosophy? No, I hadn't. It took me quite a while to read this. I had to read other things in between as well. Overall, I thought it was very accessible, to be fair. I really did. I did still find some bits quite confusing and I struggled to get my head around them, but you know, maybe that is just me. I'm not saying everyone would struggle with it. Some of the concepts and some of the theories were quite difficult to explain in a simple way, and I think Nigel did a really good job of trying to do that and trying to simplify it as much as possible and give kind of a practical example of it. I thought he did everything really well, but I don't think everything could be broken down into a really simple explanation, to be honest, and that's fine. I get that that is kind of just part and parcel of philosophy. I definitely enjoyed hearing about some people more than others. I definitely agreed with some people more than others, which is fun to kind of find out who your views align with. And I kind of liked how Nigel was quite honest about what like these people were like. Some of them were really bad people, some of them did really bad things, some of them did really good things, and he just kind of gave you a little bit of background, and I thought that was really interesting. Yes, I really like this book. If you are interested in philosophy, but you've never really dabbled in it, or you just want to learn about quite a lot of philosophers in one book, in one neat little package, I would definitely say give this one a go. I really liked it, and it's probably one of my top books from the year because I just felt like I got a lot out of this. I really do. My next book. Look at that cover. Look at that book. You can tell I picked this book up because of the cover. It's just stunning. It's just really pretty. This is Angela Carter, The Bloody Chamber. This is quite an old book now. I think it came out in the 80s, but I'm not sure. I read the prologue before I got into the book, and it spoke quite a bit about how this book just was like nothing anyone had ever read before. Like Angela Carter really like, she, you know, people thought this was crazy. Like this is a crazy take. She has like Angela Carter has stretched the boundaries, you know, all of this. And I think that will have been very true for the time, but I think in our day and age, we have seen things a bit similar to this now. So I don't think it has the impact that it will have had at the time. I think if you read this, you're probably not going to think a lot of the stories are that crazy now that we have the things that we do in the media. So things like Once Upon a Time, like the TV series, things like Maleficent, Snow White and the Huntsman, things like that, like where it's a different take, it's a bit more of a gruesome take on these stories. I think this will have been like really different and new at the time, but now it probably doesn't land in the same way. And I think that's just, like I said, it's just nature. I think that's literally just because of the time that we're living in, to be honest. I did like some of the stories more than others. I think that's always the case with short stories though. Some of them were similar. So there were a couple that were about kind of Beauty and the Beast trope kind of thing. And then there were 3 about like werewolves. So I have seen other people say they kind of got a bit bored with it being the same kind of thing. The stories also varied in length quite a bit. So there's one story, I think it's The Snow Child, which is like 2 pages long. So that's really short. And then the title book, The Bloody Chamber, is like 60 pages. I still think the stories are relevant today. There's kind of a lot of commentary. There's a lot of like social commentary in there on like patriarchy and misogyny and violence against women, like lots of kind of things around that. If you read her kind of forward as well, Angela Carter didn't see these as like retellings. She was quite clear that she didn't think of these as retellings of fairy tales. I think she thought of them more as like, she's telling the story in a way that brings out the violence and the gore and the kind of darker themes that sit underneath those stories. So she's saying that these darker themes were always in these fairy tale stories that we knew and loved and that our parents read to us as children, and she's just bringing them to light and kind of fleshing them out a bit more. My next book is Mary Lawson, A Town Called Solace. My nan gave me this to read. I feel like for me this book is a real, nothing really happens. Nothing really happens in this book. It was all right. It was just fine. I don't think I'd want to read it again. I'll be honest, I found it a bit boring. I definitely pushed through with it, but I just didn't really like it. There wasn't much going on. And I appreciate some people really like that. You know what, I really like Normal People, and I feel like not a lot went on in that, to be fair. It's one of those books, but this one I just really struggled with. I felt like I didn't really know any of the characters that well. I didn't really grow attached to any of them. Even like the town that they were in, I couldn't really vividly imagine it, or like even if I could imagine it, I didn't want to be in that town with them. I like just wasn't that bothered. It wasn't, the imagery wasn't like blowing me away. Yeah, it was just kind of about normal people living a life that I guess could happen to someone down your street, you know? So yeah, that's kind of my take on that. It was just, it was what it was, I guess. Okay, I'm so sorry if the angle or focus or whatever has changed. My camera totally died there. So I'm going to try and get through the rest quite quickly because I don't think it's fully charged yet. Okay, moving on to the next book. We've got Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. And I really love this book. This was like a 5 out of 5 star read for me. I thought the pacing was great. I loved like the concept. I didn't see the end really coming, so I thought it all tied together in this beautiful way. This was just a really nice and easy read for me. I got through it so quickly. I don't feel like it was really a long enough book to really connect with the characters and stuff, but I still felt like you knew what you needed to know about them. I just found it really enjoyable. I do think the pace quickened a lot at the end, and it almost felt like just a little bit rushed, but I was totally okay with that, to be honest. I just thought it was a really cool concept, and I do quite like sci-fi things and something that makes you think a little bit. Just reading the front there, someone has said, so wise, so graceful, so rich, and I would really agree with like the graceful point. I did just feel like it was a really graceful, lovely book. It's a lovely story about kind of how one person can slightly alter the route of different people's lives, and it's about the choices we make, and how that all kind of ties together in the scheme, like the wider scheme of things, in the big kind of scheme of the universe. What does that mean, like the choices that people can make? And I just thought it was really lovely. I just really liked the book. Just to give you a slight warning, there is a bit about like kind of a pandemic in this. I can't remember. No, it talks a bit about kind of COVID, but this pandemic is set after COVID. It's after that has happened. I just don't know if everybody likes reading about that kind of stuff or having that stuff in their literature. I know some people probably feel quite strongly against that, or have had some really bad kind of experiences with the pandemic in the past couple of years, and maybe that's just not something you want to read about right now. I'm just not having a good time with this. The card got full, so you've probably got a different angle again. I'm just sorry. I don't know what to say anymore. I don't know what to say. Okay, my next book is Bunny, which I have been wanting to read for a really long time. I did like this book, although I would definitely say it was weird. I think you could take it more metaphorical than literal. It reminded me a little bit of like Heathers, and stuff like that, and just very slightly of Maidens in a little way. I don't know, I think it was like the kind of cliquey girl group that was in it that just kind of made me think of that. It felt a bit camp, like it felt like very Mean Girls, you know, I don't know, all of that kind of thing. I did enjoy reading it. I read this really quick. I read this in one day, which is a bit wild. The story was definitely different, like the concept and everything. And again, this is set at a university, so it wasn't dark academia really like the other ones though. It did feel like a little bit lighter, even though probably what was happening within it is quite dark. What's going on in the plot is quite morbid. I wouldn't give it like a 5 stars or anything. I think this would probably sit around the same rating I would give to The Bloody Chamber, to be honest. Next up we have another non-fiction. This is The Red Parts by Maggie Nelson. Again, I feel like I picked this up based on the vibe of the cover, and I did think it sounded interesting. It is the autobiography of a trial. Basically, the author's aunt was quite violently murdered before the author was born, and it's kind of about how she deals with that and how the family cope with going through the trial all these years later when they finally get a kind of DNA match. It's very much about violence against women and society's kind of obsession with that, and also just kind of violence in general. It's a very intimate story, I think, for this author. Like, she becomes very clean, she's very honest about things she's thought and felt and done. It's also about the author's own relationships. I didn't love reading this, I'll be honest. I think it's a little bit of a difficult read because it is so raw and stripped back. I think it jumps between a lot of different things, so it's not just about this murder trial, it's also about things that the author has encountered in her life. Like I said, her relationships, but also her childhood, some traumatic things that happened to her. And I don't think it's fully what I expected when I went into it, but like I say, this is non-fiction, this is an autobiography, it is the author's life and it is what happened to her, and it's how she felt, so I don't think there's any way I could ever critique that because it is just her story as it happened. I probably wouldn't gravitate towards something like this again. I just felt like it was a little bit, I don't know, too dark for me. Like, it just, I don't think these kind of stories put me in the right place, you know, mentally. So I would probably stay away from something like this in the future, but that's not because I thought it was bad or anything like that. It's just probably not the kind of media that I would prefer to consume. Some of the things she said kind of stuck with me a little bit. Like, she talks about this thing called murder mind, and I was like, oh my god, I kind of know what she means when she's talking about that. Like, probably not to the degree that she obviously is acquainted with it, having done all of the research and you know, been in the situations that she has, but I think, yeah, some little bits I think would definitely resonate with people, but I would just, you know, kind of caution anyone before they went into this, and I would just say it's quite a raw book, it's quite a dark book. You just need to be in the right frame of mind if you're going to read it, so just be aware of that. Okay, this wasn't next chronologically. I had been listening to Mythos by Stephen Fry for a long time. I listened to this on Spotify through Spotify Premium, and I kind of wrapped it up just after I finished The Red Parts. This was the first ever audiobook that I listened to, and I listened to it when I was like doing chores and going like going on like walks and stuff. I just kind of would put it on then just to kind of have something going on, and it definitely made doing chores and stuff so much easier. I've got to say, I really liked it. I just really love this book. Like, listening to Stephen Fry tell this book, the way he tells it is perfect. Like, his voice, the way he does the different voices and stuff like that, it's so good, and I just loved learning about it. I feel like I've always been a little bit interested in Greek mythology, and I just haven't really explored it before, and I just think he presented it in such an accessible way. And he also, you know, explains how these myths and legends and stuff are still kind of present in society today, in that we have named certain things after these gods and goddesses, things like that, which I just thought was really interesting. Like, it still affects our language today, which is just really interesting to find out where that came from and where the roots of that is. The stories are generally quite shocking, I think. Like, you know, none of you don't like any of the characters, obviously, like they're kind of all awful, but that is like the nature of gods and goddesses. And yeah, I just thought it was a great introduction as well, because I am now reading Circe by Madeline Miller. It's not going to be in this review because I started it in July, but like, it's made that so much easier for me to read, because I actually recognise the names of people and what their powers were and what they were in charge of, and it's just really helped, like, even understanding those relationships and connections, and okay, well, this person is involved with this person, or they hate this person, they whatever. I definitely recommend the audiobook version as well. I think I might have struggled more if I'd have read it in an actual paperback format, because I think I would have gotten a little bit confused with names and stuff like that, and I think just hearing him pronounce the names was so much easier for me, and I really like valued being able to know how to actually pronounce the names as well, because I know I'd have read them wrong. Next up was Cursed Bunny. This is by Bora Chung, and I believe she is a Korean author, I want to say. Yes, she is. This is described as blurring the lines between magical realism, horror and science fiction. And she does this to address the horrors and cruelties of patriarchy and capitalism in modern society. So this is another book with quite a few short stories within it. Again, I preferred some to others. I think the message in some of them was clearer than in others. I'll be honest, sometimes I struggled a bit to understand how it related to the patriarchy and capitalism. That could just be me being a bit dense. That's fine if it is. But when I did look it up online, like, I'm not sure if everybody kind of understood what she was getting at either. It was, again, I've got to be honest, it was a weird book. There were definitely some very weird things happening and going on. I don't really know how I would categorise this book. I wouldn't go so far as to say it is horror. It's definitely a little bit gory in places. It's definitely a little bit sad in places, although I don't feel like you ever get to know the characters very well, so you don't really like them or dislike them or bond with them really. The only thing I would say as well is that none of the stories are really jumping out to me. Like, I do remember what happened in like 2 or 3, maybe 4 of them, but I don't look back at them and think of them all the time, so I'm not sure how much of an impact this had on me personally. It is a nice one if you want to read some short stories that, like I said, are a little bit gory or a little bit uncomfortable, that are going to make you think, what the hell is going on? What's going on now? If you like that, then I would definitely say this is a cool book. Also, I just really love the cover. I just think it's so cool, so I'm not gonna lie, I love having it on my shelf. I think I'm on to my last book now. My nan gave me this Kindle, and I honest to God don't know how to use it. Like, I cannot believe my grandmother could use this better than I can. It's just a bit sad, isn't it? Okay, I've got it, guys, I've got it. So my last book was a Kindle read. I wanted it on Kindle because I was going on holiday and I was going to read it on holiday. So I bought A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I have not read any of her books before, but obviously I have heard her name everywhere. I have heard a lot of good things about this series. I have heard that this book is probably like the worst one in the series. Not worst, that's a strong word, but like, it's about the world building, it's introducing you to the characters, all of this, and then it's meant to get better, like in the books that follow, especially in book number 2. So I probably will read book number 2. I haven't read a lot of fantasy. I have read like a little bit, like a few books and series that are about kind of paranormal things years and years ago, but I think I'm in a new era of reading right now, and this was my first fantasy read. I liked it. I felt like the world building was fine. It was easy to follow along with. I quite enjoyed that. I didn't love all of the characters. I found the main character a little bit annoying sometimes. I just think this is like inevitable for me. I don't know. She wasn't insufferable. She wasn't insufferable. I just found her a little bit annoying at times. I struggled. I feel like I can get on board with fantasy, right? But I did struggle to get the attraction to some of the guys in this book. Like, why are you telling me there's like this gorgeous, beautiful man and then some wings sprout out of his back and I'm meant to be like, oh yeah, that's a bit of me. Like Tamlin or whatever his name is in like beast form would give me the ick. I'm sorry. Like, and when his talons are about to like jump out all the time, like I don't know. I wasn't really drawn to any of the male characters, really. But whatever, I still got into it. I still enjoyed it. I am someone that suffers from cringe. If something cringy happens in like a film or TV show or in a book, I feel it deep in my soul. Like I'm really like, oh my God. And to be fair, it didn't cringe me out too much. So I am happy about that. But there were a couple of lines in this book where I was like, oh God, but it wasn't that bad and I still enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. I just felt a little bit like this was a bit of a young adult book, but the themes and some of like the scenes in this book were not young adult appropriate, so I'm a little bit lost on who it's aimed at, to be honest. But I know loads and loads of people, like all different demographics, love this series. I am going to read the second book. Like I said, I'm definitely going to read the second book. I'm just not itching to read it straight away. You know what it is? When I was reading this book, I feel like I was obsessed with it. Like I couldn't put it down. I wanted to read it constantly. But it's just afterwards, on reflection, I'm just a bit like, did you love that? Possibly not as much as I've loved other books that I've read this year. I think I just need to give everyone a bit of credit in that they have given me fair warning that this is not the best book in the series. I think we can just sum it up as it wasn't a 5-star read for me, but it wasn't that far off. I definitely did enjoy it. I think it was just really, really hyped up. And I am just going to trust the process, trust the people, and I'm going to read the second book. And hopefully I'm going to start really getting into it like as a series with the second book. That is it. That was all the books that I read between January and June. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed. I am really excited to carry on reading for the second half of this year. I think I'm going to do a kind of TikTok about my top 5 books from the start of this year, and then maybe I will review that once we get to December and we will see if it has changed at all. Like I said, I am just kind of getting back into reading, and I definitely think I need to do a bit of exploration to find out what genres I like, what type of books that I like, you know, if there's any authors that I really particularly enjoy. Hopefully this has given you some thoughts on books that you might like to read, you might like to try. You can add them to your TBR. If you have read any of these books, I would love to hear what you thought about them, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, whatever. Yeah, thanks so much for watching. I'd love it if you subscribed, if you liked this video, and if you let me know what other videos you'd like to see. I think I'm going to do a variety. I want to do vlogs, I want to do kind of foodie kind of things. I wanted to kind of just do all sorts, and I definitely want to do more book videos as well. So stick around. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, week, whatever. I will see you soon. Bye.